Hey everybody, before we get started, just to remind you, this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Hago Comics, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Kylie Denton, Nestor Flores, Sodasun0424, and VideoGamer75. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early, lots of other goodies, and it'll really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is time once again to talk about Legend of the Five Rings. Specifically, today is going to be my little book review of the Dragon Clan novella, The Eternal Knot by Mary Brennan. I feel like this one kind of came out with not a lot of fanfare. I was expecting it, but still, it was kind of like, what was it? End of last week, there was just a little tuck-in announcement. Oh, BT Dubs, it's out. And I was like, well, gotta order me a copy. So it's here. I've read it now. I've had time to read it, process it. So this is a heads up, because somebody talked about this last time when I did one of these with the Unicorn Clan novella. This is going to be very stream of consciousness, okay? This is like my immediate impressions. I read the book, I ate some lunch, because I was hungry, and I'm going to be here for a little bit, and now I'm talking about it. So it's really fresh in my mind, but that means that my thoughts aren't necessarily, like, super collected and concrete, but it's very flowy, to use buzzwords, which is appropriate, because it's a Dragon Clan novella. So, overall, opinion, once again, good. Where does it stack up out of the 4? Man, I still really like Sword in the Spirits. So, I'm not really sure. I don't know. It's hard to rank them in order, because they're all pretty good, but they all do different things, which is kind of the strength of L5R as a fiction and as a RPG series also, which is primarily where my videos are interested. But yeah, so it's not my new favorite or anything. I still, like I said, really like Sword in the Spirits, but I also really like the Dragon Clan, so this one tackles some different subjects and topics than the others tended to, so I think that gives it kind of its own distinct place. I don't know, I guess it could be second or third. I don't know. I'd have to, think about it. This is a stream of consciousness thing. We're not here for that. We're here to talk about The Eternal Knot, not the other novellas. So, it's 108 pages. You know, it's a novella, so they're pretty short. You can kill it in an afternoon. I think it literally took me an hour, though I am a fast reader. But yeah, so overall thoughts, good, positive. Definitely a good look at not even the Dragon Clan, at the Togashi Order, really. They interact with very few other Dragon Clan samurai in it. And while they talk about how, yes, technically the Togashi are samurai, they might still follow the merits of Bushido, they still have to follow, some of the same code of conduct. They're also got a lot of spiritual stuff going on, and finding the path and all that. So it's kind of, interesting and unusual. But the Togashi definitely have their own way of doing things that is different even from some other samurai in the Dragon Clan. And really the tone of The Eternal Knot is it's kind of I'd say kind of a coming-of-age story. It's kind of one of those classic narratives of growth and personal learning, because the central viewpoint character, she's on the cover, Togashi Kazue, starts by passing her Genpuku, picking her new name, and has to figure out what her tattoos do, because she's got 2 to start with. And, they let her do things that are esoteric. So yeah, it's a whole area, and that's really the personal narrative, is kind of her self-discovery, growth as a character, coming to terms with the unusual powers she's discovered, the titular knot, because it's the knot tattoo that's emblazoned on her forehead, which has mysterious and unclear powers that I won't spoil for you, but obviously they're in the novella, because it'd be weird otherwise, because it's the Eternal Knot. Anyway, yeah, it discusses a lot of that. There's a lot of discussion about her training. There's a lot of discussion about past lives in general. There's not really any detail, because that's kind of not the point, but just know that there's some reincarnation and stuff going on. But they do a lot of spiritual talk and spiritual thinking, both from a, broad strokes. They talk about topics like the Tao, like enlightenment. Koans are kind of important. They talk about how Togashi monks train, but also in specific, Kazue has to wrestle with some philosophical and spiritual questions on an up-close and personal level. If you're looking for, an action-packed book, this is not it. There's not really any fights or anything. It's just a lot of personal meditation, understanding, discussions between characters about philosophy and history and people. And a lot of wandering in the woods with your thoughts. The word mudra gets used a lot. There's a lot of meditating in the book. Will the book make you meditate? I don't know. That's on you. But yeah, so that's the rough high level. And if that's not the tone you want from a book, I'd say you can probably give it a pass. Like I said, I really liked it because I like the dragon, and I think this is a really interesting look because they have a very unique view of the setting. But it's not as, like, adventurous or multi-spectrum as, say, the Unicorn novella was. You know, there's a lot of mystery and intrigue, and even a little bit of fighting in the Scorpion novella, and the Phoenix one is kind of almost like an urban well, not, you know, it's a historical fantasy, but it fits kind of the urban fantasy genre where it's just like, oh, we're just going about our daily lives. Oh, there's a spookum. What do we do about this spookum situation? You know, it's not a murder mystery per se, but it's a spiritual mystery which kind of overlays what should be a normal everyday life thing. That too is a little bit about a coming of age thing, but actually that's maybe why I like the Eternal not so much, because it really lets you get a grasp on those characters. Actually, honestly, now that I think about it, this is the stream of consciousness thing coming up. All the novellas really do, I mean, that's natural for there to be character arcs and character growths, but the novellas manage to all concisely take their main characters who appear and kind of put them through an accelerated period of growth for them to kind of, I don't want to necessarily say grow up, but in a sense, grow up and figure out themselves and thus what they should be doing. So, Yojiro has to deal with his personal conflict, being on roll, but also being expected to do shady stuff as a scorpion. Shiba Sukune has to deal with the fact that she wasn't supposed to be the clan champion, but now she's the clan champion. And Shinjo Shono has to deal with the fact that he's heir to his clan, but he's real emo right now, and he has to get un-emo. Togashi Kazue is significantly less emo than Shono, but she still has a little emo in there. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of questions about failure, a lot of discussion about the three sins. I think, is it fear, desire, and regret? Fear and regret are definitely two of them. Those are the ones that come up the most. So I'm like, what was the third one again? I could read it again, but I don't want to slow down the production. So yeah, but all of them do kind of have that setup, that story staple. You know, it's much more about internal conflicts than external conflicts. This heavily leans on internal conflicts, like even more so. There are several chapters of Kazue just wandering around the monastery or wandering around the wilderness, usually talking to her peers or her teachers, trying to understand herself and her powers better. So that's neat. I like it a lot, but if you're not into that, this book will not be super strong for you. Otherwise, I think it's honestly got a smaller, tighter focus. Like, there's a lot of deep spiritual powers and possibilities in it. There's a lot of high-level potential ramifications, but the stakes are very personal. It's all about what's going on with Kazue. You know, will she figure out this power? Will she, when she does figure out what it does, will she, figure out how to use it wisely? There's a lot of that discussion in the philosophy of the Togashi monks, because not only do you get a few viewpoint scenes from Kazue, but you also see Togashi Mitsu, who is not, by the way, the heir to the clan yet. That happens towards the end of the book. That's not a spoiler, because he's been the heir to the clan for a while, but it's important to remember that the Eternal Knot is set before, I think, all of the other mainline events of the current 5e fiction. So that's an important task. But Mitsu's kind of our secondary character. We see from him occasionally as he's doing stuff other places or thinking about stuff related to Kazue. So he's kind of a secondary character. And he's pretty important in the fiction right now, so if you do want to catch up and maybe see a bit more into his mentality, that could be a good reason to get the book and read. But there's a lot of discussion about action, inaction, when is the right time to act, when is the right time not to act, why should you act at certain points, and how you should act, showing restraint, not showing restraint, that kind of thing. Like I said, lots of philosophy and introspection. But they don't really do necessarily anything high impact. This isn't like, Sword in the Spirits, where because she's, now the Phoenix Clan champion, she has to deal with, spiritual matters and her own newfound authority and kind of like how to be that high-level position. Because, remember, as I said, Kazue just passes her Genbuku in the first chapter. She picks her new name and is, tattooed and is now a full-blown monk, not a novice. So, she's fairly low on the limited hierarchy of the Togashi Order. They don't have a lot of hierarchy, but Kazue is mostly at the bottom of it. Yojiro is an established Emerald Magistrate for the Scorpion Clan. And he's dealing with, major potential political ramifications here. He's got a big name investigation that concerned Bayushi Aramoto, brother of the clan champion. And, honestly, stake-wise, I think the Unicorn novella has the highest ones. This one probably has the lowest ones. It's really just, will Kazue figure out some stuff about herself, and can she use that stuff in a helpful way? And the answer is up to you, reader, listener and reader. So, in a sense, the tone is very different than some of the other novellas, but I like it for that because it really does let you dig deep on the subject of the Togashi monks. But if you're looking for, major plot fill-in, this ain't it. Which I'm okay with, There's no reason that every story has to be, fate of the universe all the time. And if you don't know lots about the Dragon Clan and the Togashi monks, this is a great way to get into it. I will mention now the lovely little, glossy. I got the physical edition as always. They're pretty cheap. It's only $15. But the little physical glossary is the appendix at the back. Continues to be about the Togashi Order, so it kind of tells their story, how they were founded, some notes here and there about some stuff, how they operate, how they deal with things. The kind of internal divisions. There are some monks who just stay at the High House of Light and don't go anywhere. There's some monks who go out into the world, and there's technical definitions, but I don't feel like trying to pronounce those words right now. That's kind of in the back. The story does cover the secret of the tattoos. It's Togashi no Kami's blood. Though I believe that is also mentioned in the core book. That's where it comes from. But unlike the other appendices, there's not really a lot of, super secret history or legends or folklore of the dragon in there. They don't say what it's for. They allude to the fact that, well, the one secret, I should say, that comes up very early in the novella, so it's not like a secret to you, the reader, but it's a thing that the clan keeps secret, is that the Isezumi are all reincarnated from previous incarnations, basically. The founders of the order, under Togashi, swore that they would follow him in this lifetime and the next. So there's a lot of karmic connections. That's why some people feel drawn to the order, no matter what their station or standing is, because they were monks in a previous life and they feel drawn back there to continue learning spiritual lessons through consequent lifetimes. So that's kind of a secret. The monks don't like to reveal that, but that's kind of like the first level secret of their order. So there's some allusion to that, but they ask the question of, well, why is this important? Why did they have to do it this way? What's going on that, because monks never, there are loads of monks, I should say, who never leave the High House of Light, the monastery. So why should they constantly train and perfect their spiritual power? So is it like, did Togashi no Kami see something? He probably saw something. It's not really, outlined what he could have seen, but there are some allusions to some stuff. But no hard details. This isn't like, say, the Unicorn novella, which explains the mechanic of, Jin, or relates a couple of legends about the Unicorn clan in the earliest days, which may or may not be true accounts, but are, big plot hook setups. This isn't like the back of the Phoenix novella. And for some reason, I feel like, I don't know why, maybe I'm just itching for a Crane Clan novella. Whenever my mind wants to say Phoenix, I first feel like saying Crane. That's wrong. There's no Crane Clan novella yet. Don't know what that's going to be about. They got a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if they want to put it in a novella. Anyway, they can also do a flashback. Who knows? But, as I was saying, the Phoenix Clan novella really speaks to the both supposed and the true history and kind of powers and descriptions of the Kaito family, and boy howdy, the Scorpion novella, that talks about some real deep stuff. There's not so hard and fast on that. I mean, this one confirms Togashi Hoshi as the original Togashi's son, his physical son, and that he's an immortal shapeshifter and stuff. So it kind of confirms that he's still out there, and that is in fact who he is and what he's doing. If you see him on a card somewhere, But yeah, it's mostly just little sidebar tidbits, not like full-blown, here's the secrets. I do believe the book is the first time that this edition has mentioned the enlightened madness. You know, you have a glimpse of enlightenment, of truth, but it's too much for you. It's, not in the proper context, and you go crazy, but not in like the typical way you go crazy. But that's a subject in both the novella and in the appendices kind of explains that, so, that's interesting. But yeah, otherwise, most of the stuff in the appendix is basically just reiterating in more of a non-fiction faction stuff you picked up in the novella in the fiction context. Because there is plenty of that discussion in the novella, like I said. It's very discussive. There's lots of thinking, introspection, talking about how things work. And, well, honestly, I suppose all the novellas are like that, because Rokugan is not our real life, and we need to explain stuff, but this is phrased a lot as like an introspection. So there's a lot of thinking about, this is how the Togashi Order does stuff. You go here, you do this duty, we handle these things, we think about this stuff, we must be aware of these things, kind of stuff, and like, how that all comes together. I feel like I'm using the words introspection and discussion a lot, but it's hard not to, because, like I said earlier, that's really the crux of the book. So, character-wise, like I said, Kazue's the focal point. You get to see a lot of her inner journey and stuff. I don't think she's maybe as dynamic as the other characters, but she's all got this kind of inner conflict and unsurety. She's, very young and new to this. Got a little bit of her own backstory and stuff going on, which it's all in the novel. There's no really need to talk about it. But she, kind of has to grow into this position because her knot tattoo is very mysterious and has kind of a more unusual and higher level power than many monks are used to. She also has a storm serpent tattoo that lets her punch real good, but that's neither here nor there. Like I said, she does punch some things to test it out. She does not really use it to fight. Like, there's an illusion, for instance, while she's traveling with Togashi Mitsu somewhere, that, like, bandits would be real dumb to attack them because Mitsu could, like, take out a whole gang of them on his own, which he could. The man has all kinds of crazy powers. But anyway, that relevant point, though, is that she doesn't actually get to, like, throw down with bandits on the road or anything. That's kind of a spoiler, but kind of not. Like I said, I'm letting you know, this is a book review. If you're into that aspect of the setting, you will not see a lot of it here. She does not punch any mountains apart. She does not breathe fire. She actually tests it. She's like, can I, like, shoot fire or lightning? No? Okay. There is some talk about jujitsu, and, like I said, there's a little bit of, like, sparring or practice, but it's all very brief and not super detailed. It's just part of the process. It's one of the things they learn. But Kazue's character is introspected a lot. She's alright. Like, I think because she kind of pivots between very real practical concerns of, like, can I learn what this power is? Now that I've learned what it is, can I use it properly, kind of stuff, and just following her, spiritual center, learning, teaching, studying kind of stuff. She offers advice to characters, she receives advice from other characters, the great circle of wisdom, stuff like that. But anyway, it's, she's alright as a viewpoint character, and I think because of her kind of youth and her personal, I don't want to say turmoil, but the fact that she's in a period of development as a character lets you shed some light on a lot of the subjects of the Togashi Order, which I think is the real point of the novel, is to, like, examine the Togashi Order as a macrocosm through the microcosm of one monk, passing her Genpuku, coming of age, receiving the spiritual power, studying the spiritual power, figuring out what her path is, and thus what her duties are. And in a sense, it's also what the story is about with Togashi Mitsu, who's one of the other big supporting characters. Like I said, you even get his viewpoint in a couple of chapters, because he's well-respected in the Order, he's well thought of, but he's not the clan heir yet, until the end of the novel when Togashi Yokuni names him as such. He just literally shows up, which is a big deal. The man almost never comes out of his chambers, but he shows up in front of Mitsu and it's like, you will be the heir now. So it's kind of like his development too, as kind of like through the lens of Kazue as a character. There are a small handful of Togashi supporting characters who aren't super important but are good for background. You meet various teachers who cover things. They offer, they test Kazue, they offer her advice when she needs it, kind of stuff, but they're mostly just in the background. There's a couple of other supporting characters who aren't a big deal. And there is another character who you get a decent look at in the book who kind of, at one point, Kazue is basically out in the wilderness, kind of trying to find herself. Real classic stuff of this genre. And she runs into basically a hermit woman. And that character has a lot of development and discussion, and also some other stuff that goes on. So that's characters. Setting-wise, I think this is why I really like this, because it discusses a lot of weird stuff in the setting. Like, first of all, there's the setting in the High House of Light, which, while could theoretically be called Kyuden Togashi, I believe it's been said in some of the later fictions, or it might be in Courts of Stone, actually, now that I think about it. But it's mentioned that a member of the Hantei line has never been to the High House of Light, which has implications if you're following the story right now. Anyway, they say that if you aren't supposed to reach there, you'll never find the 1,000 steps, but otherwise, children are just stumble upon them. They have a lot of different discussions about what's going on inside, what it's like there, stuff like that. They discuss kind of the split between the Brotherhood and the Togashi Order. The Isezumi contemplate the Tao, they contemplate the Kami and the fortunes, but also they study and seek enlightenment in other ways too, through their unique spiritual powers. So there's some discussion on that, though other monks don't really appear besides the Togashi Order. But also there is a fairly diverse discussion of stuff like enlightenment and wisdom comes up a lot of like how they handle that, different tools and stuff, Kazue says are mudras. She studies a mandala at one point. There's a lot of discussion of little teaching tools, spiritual practices, meditation, fasting, swimming, stuff like that. Like she swims in a lake to see if she's more resistant to cold, stuff like that. One guy has a spirit sensing tattoo, so they talk a lot about spirits, which is just full of fun little things. First of all, there's a lot of mention of different yokai, different, spiritual creatures, which I feel like hasn't been as strongly alluded to by L5R in the past. Like there are some oddball creatures, but a lot of entities got shafted by Jigoku taint, everything's hell. I have complaints about how the original L5R canon handles Jigoku stuff in the taint, but anyway, that's a different discussion. Which luckily barely comes up at all. And I won't say why, but yeah, that's something, that kind of spiritual corruption isn't hardly mentioned at all. But they mention different kinds of yokai, for instance, there's a really funny anecdote that comes up when the master of the sensing tattoo goes out with Kazue because she wonders if her power is related to spirits in some way. And he's like, I figured out what my tattoo did when a member of the Asawa family came to visit, and apparently they kept a bakeneko, a demon cat, as a pet. And I'm just like, that's a great anecdote. I love that. I love that quality, right? It adds a little bit of character to the setting without elaborating on it. Similarly, there are other types of yokai mentioned, they're already mentioned in other works, but this guy mentioned specifically that he met, an Onyo, an angry ghost. But also, this contains talk of humans becoming yokai, of humans becoming monsters or ghosts. Like, if they, they're corrupted by their sins, or they spend too much time out in the wilderness, you can get those kinds of legends, which is really interesting, because I don't really, looking at L5R before, I hadn't personally seen any of that. So that's another thing that really does this, is it really captures a lot of the spirituality of the world, even more so, I think, than because I think the thing with the Phoenix novella is that it kind of blended the physical and the spiritual, and that makes sense for the Phoenix clan. So, it kind of blended how there is, spirituality enshrined by the Phoenix clan, especially by the Kaito. The Kaito physically becoming a conduit for the Kami, kind of their Zen archery approach, stuff like that. The physical links, like with Sukune going, you ghosts are angry you're not being properly honored. Well, the Kaito are Phoenix, so you guys are also all Phoenix ancestors, and we will make sure to add your names to all the shrines. You're sacred ancestors now. Go you. Right? Kind of like she's a physical agent with spiritual powers. Whereas the Eternal Knot is much more wild, much more open, much more mysterious. There's a lot of time spent in wilderness, just at multiple points throughout the book, and just being in nature, thinking about stuff, encounters with spirits, encounters with people, spiritual study, meditation, and just kind of, mystic stuff just exists out there in the world, doing stuff. Which is a quality I really like. That's kind of the angle I like in my Rokugan, is just that slight hint of just, there's just sometimes there's magic stuff. Other than that, there's not much else to say. I probably talked too much about this already, but that's kind of my broad level. Characters is good. The setting is good. I think even more so than the others, there's not as much of a plot as there is a character arc. Like, this is, fundamentally, the story is 100% about Kazue's self-learning and self-discovery, right? Like, there are some actions that she takes along that path that lead other characters to have to make decisions, or lead herself to have to think about things or do things, or get into conflicts of a sort, but that is the one thing I think that sets it apart from the other novellas. Like, Shano has to get over his emo-ness because he's in effectively an enemy city dealing with, all kinds of stuff. Evil sorceress, crazy hedonistic caliph, all that kind of stuff. Like, he's dealing with things in his life in addition to that, so that's why he's forced to grow by external stuff. Tsukune, similarly, she's minding her own business, trying to figure herself out, and get that dumbass Tadaka to be less of a dumbass. Pro tip, it didn't work, read the Halloween fiction. So she has to very quickly own up to the fact that, oh shoot, I'm the Phoenix Clan champion, I have a lot of responsibilities, both physical and spiritual, I need to sort out. Same with Yojiro, he has to kind of come to terms with being Scorpion and actually being useful to his clan, but not just being a dickhead. Like Aramoro, he has to kind of find out how he can maintain his morality while also still doing effectively dirty work. Protect the secrets of the clan and not. And he ends up on Team Shoju. Kazue's is all internal. It's all just, I have this knot tattoo. What does that tattoo do? Oh, that's what it does. I don't know what to do with this power. What do I do with this power? Should I have this power? It's all questions about herself. There's no, other than just, there's societal pressures, I guess, because, and honestly, I don't know how much this is Kazue projecting, but in character, she's concerned that the other monks are, disappointed in her, looking down on her. They're thinking she's failed her test because even though she's past her Genpuku, she has these tattoos, and she doesn't know what one of them does or how to use that power, which is not unheard of, but because of her personality and how she acts, she feels bad about it, and she sometimes feels like the other monks, are kind of like disappointed in her or something, or it's a little bit selfish, but I do feel like there's an impression, like, after she's figured out her first tattoo, that she can, like, punch with the storm or whatever, but she hasn't figured out the knot. She gets assigned to the scriptorium to, like, copy records, like a medieval Christian monastery, and she's just like, ugh. It's, she's like, this is kind of dull. But yeah, so like I said, there's no plot. It's all internal arcs with Kazue, which is different, but not bad. I don't think there's anything else to talk about with that, so talk about my overall thoughts. I didn't really necessarily dislike anything about this, which is good. I just, some of it didn't, like I said, some of it isn't as dynamic, I think, because there's not as much of an external plot, but it's all very interesting. I do feel a little sad that the appendix isn't more, like, hardcore about secrets and stuff. Like, it doesn't establish anything you couldn't have learned from other sources, except maybe the Enlightened Madness, but that's even talked about in the novella. No spoilers as to why, but it comes up, so it's kind of like, alright. I feel like if you just produced a Dragon Clan RPG book, that would do it, but on the other hand, that would be more expensive than this novella, so whatever. Spread it out. Spread out the knowledge. Characters, plot. The writing tone is great. I really do feel for all the characters. Everybody does have their own distinct voices and kind of stuff going back and forth. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what other fictions Mary Brennan has written for this edition of L5R, but I remember she's, all the writers are pretty good, so she has a very good style. They're keeping it diverse. I wonder what novella will be next. But yeah, so I guess that's everything. I'll go ahead and wind this down now. Hopefully this wasn't too weird and stream of consciousness, but hey, that's very much in nature with the story. There's a lot of flow, a lot of thinking, a lot of, contemplation. What's next? So, yeah. If you haven't already, and if that entices you to buy it, consider purchasing it. And do remember, if you get digital, you don't get the little appendix, but maybe that's not as big of a deal, because I've told you it's not necessarily anything groundbreaking. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and leave a like. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section down below. What did you think of the novel? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? How does it stand up to you and favors the other? I felt like, I was part of a distinct camp when I really liked the Unicorn novella. Some people didn't like it for its world building outside of Rokugan or its character introspection on Shono. But honestly, I don't like to think too hard about any of the novellas because they're kind of short. But yeah, what are your thoughts? And of course, if you're new here and haven't already subscribed to the channel, we do continually make L5R content. We talk about schools and the RPG. I review RPG books, novellas, and stuff. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's hard to keep up with all the diverse text fiction on that. But novella's a nice, concrete, discrete chunk of story we can talk about. And even if you're already subscribed, consider that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a new video. So that's it then. Like I said at the front of the video, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early. Lots of other stuff. Helps us out. So I will see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned for more L5R content. Also consider hitting up our podcast, What's Up? We talk about a lot of topics on What's Up, including sometimes RPGs and stuff. I've talked about the L5R RPG and story there before. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for your time as always.